And a very good morning to you. As you get up, we'd love to know how your morning is so far. I can see a couple of tweets for the early rise as Mwangi Daniel said, good morning. Tuned in from Nakuru, love the show so far. What was happening right there? Nimeona pesa ikimwagwa. Well, yes, this is the Kenyan society, a typical depiction of what happens there. Tabin Jerry watching as well, good morning. Bobo Wino saying the show has started on a really high note. God bless you all for another week. Getting you from Kisumu kwa Nambaga. Sherry also saying morning, tuned in. As always, we love to know how your morning is so far. When you're getting us from, tweet us at K24 TV. You can also SMS us on 21222. Many stories for us to go through as we get through this newspaper review this morning. Let's look at the front pages of each of the dailies. Then we get to my panel. Front page of the People Daily. Health crisis looms as NHIF ministry tussle. Hospital owners up in arms over long delays in accreditation of new facilities, while those already in operation complain of slow reimbursement and graft. A revelation that the People Daily is making this morning and can be found therein. Front page of the Standard, Raila new powers upset Jubilee MPs. Politicians accuse former Prime Minister of usurping power after he ordered KPA to stop dredging at Likoni Channel and urged public servants to ignore the directive even if put in writing, quote unquote. That's a story that you can get in the front page, on the front page rather, of your Standard. Front page of the Daily Nation. TSC to hire 10,000 interns to plug a gap. Qualified teachers willing to serve anywhere in the country advised to send their applications by October 23rd to be considered for the 4,300 vacancies in primary schools and 6,000 in secondary schools. Terms and conditions put there in terms of age, the registration, the qualification as well that's needed for that. And you can get that in your copy of the Daily Nation. On the Star's front page, why Raila Mudavadi are in an all-out war. War of words between the two exposes deep-seated rivalry over 2022 control of Western votes. Allies to the former PM want ANC leader to quit troubled NASA. Question is there even an answer at this particular point in time? We'll be talking about that as well. And of course, front page of the Business Daily, Kenyans with 100,000 Kenya shillings in bank fall to 13-year low. Decline from 1.58 million to 1.45 million signifies tough times for middle class and employees as well. And that's what the Business Daily is looking at this morning. There's a lot we need to discuss right here, both from a political angle and as far as the economy is concerned, and also healthcare, because it's an issue we've been talking about. It's part of the Big Four agenda, and we want to really see where we stand as far as that's concerned. We start off with the People Daily's front page. My panel is now fully in place. Mark Bichachi, political analyst. Good morning. Good morning. Ruth Ambogo, youth policy advisor. Karibu sana. Good morning. Asante. And Ben Muller, governance expert. Good morning. A very good one to you. Okay, fantastic stuff. Let's look at the PD's front page. Health crisis, and it's because of a tug of war, supremacy battle between the National Hospital Insurance Fund and the ministry as to who declares and who gives accreditation. The ministry saying that there's been a lot of graft at the NHIF and also at the KMPD, who's supposed to be declaring these institutions, of course, that should be moving forward and usurping those powers and taking it to themselves to use it. The KMPD and the NHIF saying that there's an issue going on right here. So we have a UHC agenda that should be rolled out and should be in fruition by the time the president is leaving office. We have a citizenry that needs medical care, but somewhere at the top, there's fighting going on and that takes place. And they say when the two bulls are fighting, it's a grass that usually bears the biggest brunt of this. Mr. Mulo, let me start with you on this one. Because clearly there seems to be a disconnect. Yes. As they try to decide who's supposed to be doing this, the service, and it's a very critical service of health, isn't getting to the citizen. You know, Jeff, one of the biggest tragedies we suffer as a country is that we have individuals who go into public office with the primary and sole objective of stealing. And I'll give you a specific example about NHIF. There is a gentleman who was appointed the CEO by the name Mwangi. And he went there, I think, in 2016 or 2017. And it did not run more than 2 years before he had multi-billion scandals. That tells you, he was the acting finance director before he became the CEO. And that tells you about the culture that we have. That guy did not go there to do anything or to reform anything within the NHIF. His primary objective was he was salivating actually to steal. And now he wants to run for governor in Nakuru. NHIF plays an extremely critical role in terms of facilitating universal health care. So when we have mismanagement, which has become the hallmark, particularly under the Jubilee administration, it becomes extremely unfortunate. Because even recently I had complaints that people are required to enlist with specific facilities, even for maternity.
What they've been trying to say is, if you're expectant and you have listed, say, Mbagathi Hospital as your facility, if you happen to travel to Kisumu and you need to give birth, then you will not be admitted to hospital. What kind of nonsense is that? And this kind of tugs of war have never been about any service that they want to improve to the public. It's about competition for the resources. Who steals what? We are not lost on the recent scandals that we had about funny clinics that were being paid for not actually offering services to the public, yet the genuine public hospitals that actually have been offering services to wananchi are the ones that never get paid by NHIF. I think it is important, and I mean this conversation has been going for a long time. I do not understand why the CS in charge of health, Madam Cicely, has not really cracked the whip in terms of what is happening at the NHIF. But now it really needs to go beyond that, because there is need actually to inculcate a different culture of public service in this country. This idea of people just going, because even when you see people clamoring to head key parastatals, like even the NSSF, they're not going there because they really care about the retirees who are suffering in this country. They are going there because there's some multi-billion shillings that can be stolen. I mean, that culture must come to an end.
Ruth, I'll bring you in on this as well. Odongo, the acting chief executive at the NHIF, saying the NHIF Act declares, talks of declaration and not accreditation. What we do is contract undertaking to do business with health facilities licensed by the ministry. So already we can see now that there's exposure to what might be going on, the blame game will happen right now. And we're talking about, again, a very critical service right here. When the ministry says it's stepping in because of allegations of graft, how do we stem this once and for all? Because the ministry as well has also been tainted. So it's not like we're getting somebody who's never been tainted with graft before. And at the end of the day, lives are on the line. Literal lives are on the line with this one.
You see, I mean, the blame games aside, the sideshows aside, the content of the discussion here is graft and, you know, the widespread corruption within the Ministry of Health, which is very unfortunate because, you know, the provision of health is one of the key components of any government, of any leadership, provision of affordable healthcare services to its citizens. Just the other day, we saw a story of a gentleman who unfortunately lost the daughter because of, you know, delayed services, so many procedures, amongst them including the fact that he did not have NHIF at the time. We also saw a story back in Mbale, where I happen to come from, of a lady who had been knocked down by a boda guy, and when she was taken to hospital, same story. Oh, you do not have NHIF. We cannot treat you. And yet these are very critical services. You know, Kenyans are losing lives because of, you know, the very many tussles within hospitals, within the ministry, within NHIF, and all contributed by graft. In as much as the ministry is saying that, oh, we have stepped in to take over the roles of NHIF in accrediting institutions because of graft, they themselves are being accused of being involved in corruption, because we are told that before institutions are accredited, people have to pay hefty amounts of money to get that accreditation, and others are being, you know, disaccredited so that they can pay again, you know, that money to get back their accreditation. So it's unfortunate that in the fight, rather in the quest to have universal health care services provided in this country, services that are critical, you know, to the survival of a nation, guarantee a nation food security, guarantee a nation universal health care that is affordable to everyone and accessible at whatever point in time, then you have a healthy nation that can be able to survive and, you know, build the economy, and if that is the case. So when we have health crisis, you know, when we have the health ministry plunging under graft and corruption, then I don't know where we are headed as a country. And this needs to be taken seriously, because back there at Mashinani, there are people who are unable to afford health care. And because of the graft that goes on within the hospitals themselves, you know, within NHIF itself, within the ministry itself, so many people end up losing lives, and it is unfortunate. Right,
and even look at this, Mark, we're talking about graft going and taking different forms in different facets of society, in different ministries. Is it a policy issue? Is it a legislation issue? What do we do? Because when it gets to these particular levels, losses of life, and you can see the game is still being played there, you've said as Kenyans we have a big issue when it comes to graft, not only at the top, but all the way down to you and me. How do we solve this? Because clearly, there's one journalist who came in and said we just need to put a firing squad. Make an example out of someone who has actually gone down that road. to curtail what will happen in future?
You know, the truth of the matter is, if you look at NHIF as an example, the CEO was arrested last year, November, okay? That tells you that the DCI, the DPP, and the government are doing what is necessary in terms of arresting the people who are culpable. But here's the problem. The problem is, corruption in this country has become like cancer, okay? Now, it's perpetuated not by the head. It's perpetuated by the cells next to the cancer. That's the problem. That in this country, whereas we've arrested many more people than we've ever arrested in our history, whereas we've returned 3 billion shillings worth of corrupt money, but what is happening is the people who are supposed to support the fight against corruption are not doing so. And where is the problem in NHIF? The problem is also on the hospital side. Okay, there are hospitals where if you go, they tell you, just sign here that we did a surgery on you and we removed your stomach, while the truth of the matter is you're treated for a flu. So there are people who are literally fleecing NHIF, and then we will turn and complain and say the government is doing nothing. We must address the issue of the Kenyan public and its role in corruption, and that's really what's ailing NHIF, because NHIF is not only the only culprit. Ask these other insurance firms. We're interested in NHIF because it's a public-run institution, but ask Britam, ask Resolution Health, ask all of them how many con hospitals exist. So when you say it takes a while to register hospitals, my friend, you forget Dr. Mugo. Was he working for Dr. Mugo in course? Was he working for government? No, he was not. So you cannot be a country where the government is waking up every day, arresting people, purging corruption, and then you're the same person queuing for corruption, and then expect there to be a change. A time must come when the citizenry themselves must begin to stand up against corruption, because by the time you're going to a hospital and you are agreeing that your stomach was removed, when really what happened is you are treated for a flu, then who's worse? Okay, because you're robbing yourself. Number two, the universal health care pillar has been piloted in 4 counties. Okay, of course, good results, some bad results, but you must query the question of how will NHIF operate when universal health care is a national issue. Now, that is the critical question, because then we cannot have conmen Kenyans. That's the biggest danger, because imagine this. Imagine all of us set up a clinic. Then all of us put fake claims. That means the people with genuine claims will have less money to do it. So if there is a hindrance to the universal healthcare pillar, it is the corruption of the citizenry.
And even as we talk about that corruption, let's move on to a different story, same script. And this one, at times, even the citizens say that it's almost, they're at a point where they're getting corruption headline fatigue. Page 7 of the People Daily, another scam looms as 10 billion shillings for the hungry, quote unquote, goes missing. The government is staring at a new mega scandal after it emerged that 10.4 billion shillings meant to feed the hungry cannot be accounted for. Now, the report is showing that cash spent under various categories, but concerns have arisen over how the list of beneficiaries was arrived at, as there are no documents provided to show how they were identified and paid. Very quickly, because just give short comments as we move on, I'll just bounce this off of you, Mark. Again, now moving from the NHIF to a different institution, large, colossal sums of money at place, and they just vanished without a trace. Back to the same story. People are wondering, okay, fine, when do we get to the point where we can't move forward? Now, 10 billion shillings meant to feed starving, Kenyans.
Take it from me. My friends and I, and Ruth will bear witness to this, have donated nearly 1 million shillings worth of our time and our money and our resources to help people who are suffering from hunger. We continue to do so. So there's no topic that is dearer to my heart than how monies for hungry and poor people are spent in this country. And this is the problem. You see, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Right. Now, if Kenya is to be strong, we must regard how we take care of those who are in need. It is a shame and a flagrant abuse of human rights and abuse of the dignity of the human person when you can take 10 billion shillings meant for the poorest people in this country. And when I mean poorest people, it is people who, if you give 1,000 shillings, they have no idea how it looks like, because for the last 15, 20 years of their lives, they've not seen it. There are people who do not know how what it is to switch on a light. They don't know what a blanket is. And when you steal from such people without shame, that is how far Kenya has fallen. So
Mark,
how
let me
do you
ask you,
fix
because
this?
if this is dear to your heart and you've spent that much in terms of time and money,
Yes.
that's where we're going to. How do you fix this? Because the money is being given clearly. The Kenyans are willing to play their part.
Yes.
But then again, there's no accountability for 10 billion.
And that's
Kenya
the
shillings.
issue. The issue is very simple. We must do two things. Number one, this is a report from the Auditor General, correct? So Parliament, which is another weak point in the fight against corruption, has forgotten it has oversight priorities. You know, if Parliament did oversight as much as it went to church, this country would change.
Yeah.
The problem with our parliamentarians is they pray for God and for the president to do things they should do. How many times do you hear parliamentarians say, oh, Namtukufu Rais, oh, Mheshimiwa DP, please bring us a road? Come on, who budgets these things? Who is in charge of that oversight? So number one, Parliament is letting us down in as far as the oversighting the executive is concerned. And people say the judiciary is a weak point in the fight against corruption. The other weak point is Parliament in refusing to do its oversight role. Secondly, those places that don't receive this aid, and this aid is missing, have parliamentarians. They have people who literally legislate on behalf of those people. Those are the people who failed. Because by the time one of your citizens is dying of hunger, why do you still have the title MP? So if we are going to fight corruption, we must bring the fight of corruption to the doorstep of MPs, because you must ask yourself also, that same MP who saw his people die receives 100 million shillings worth of CDF. You want to tell me that it will take more than 1 million shillings to feed those people? Let me tell you the truth, it won't. It won't, because it is not that expensive to feed those people.
Okay, so it lands at the parliamentarians' doorstep on Mark. But let me come to you, Ruth, as well.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Auditor General.
Yeah.
And we've seen this before, even as Ouko left office. When he was in office, he'd scream from parastatal to agency to ministry. There's so much accountability that's going on here. How do we help the Auditor General do his job better? Because he comes and says, right here, there is an issue. We see it, we move on. The next day is like, this government has an issue right here, this agency, and he's done it over and over again. How do we help the AG do his job better?
I think first it falls upon the citizen to play their role in terms of pushing and holding their leaders to account. As Bichachi has rightfully put it, the fight against corruption is a judicious process. It is a legal process. There is an entire process to it. That once the controller of budget, once the Auditor General tables a report before Parliament, it is upon the responsible committee to actually vet this report, hold to account and call to account the persons involved, the managers, the CEOs, the heads of that National Drought and Management Authority, to sit and account for where this money has gone to. It is unfortunate that, you see, when Parliament fails to play its role, we as citizens are the ones who will continue to suffer, because at the end of the day, this 10 billion shillings is not money that grew from trees. Even if it was borrowed money, we as Kenyans will still have to pay back that money in form of taxes, money that could have been used, you know, for other functions, for other development agenda and other projects that would steer this country forward. So we as a citizen have to be vigilant right now. I'm seeing the church is trying to come up with measures and trying to find ways of how they can, you know, join in the fight against corruption, putting up systems to ensure that corruption is not entrenched within some of the churches. I've seen one or two churches coming up and saying, you know, the Catholic Church over the weekend proclaimed itself on the matter of corruption. But then where do we stand as citizens? Over and above the role that a few activists in the society play by, you know, whistleblowing, by going out on the streets and rather picketing and demonstrating against corruption. What is me as an individual citizen? What am I doing as a citizen? Can I sit down, my member of parliament, just as Mark Bichachi has said? I remember when we began the project that he's talking about, the Baringo project, to feed the persons who are suffering as a result of food insecurity. One of the things that really shocked us when we began the project back in March was that the member of parliament for the particular area that had been on media, you know, before all media stations, you can clearly see citizens saying we are dying of hunger. You can see graves being dug within homesteads. The member of parliament had the guts to stand and say, oh, these reports are not true. There is no hunger in my constituency. And that is the constituency that we had actually gone to. And unfortunate, even more unfortunate, is that the last visit that we went to, there's a lady that we had met during our first visit. So in our second visit, we had said, oh, you know, we are going to check on how she's doing. When we met her, she was literally facing death, you know, literally waiting for her death, saying that had you guys come 2 days later I would have died. So, you know, the next time we are going, we are happy saying, oh, now we are going to check on her progress. We even had medicine for her.
So it's
shock
the same
on
thing.
us.
Our
Shock on
parliamentarians
us.
failing on the job.
Exactly. Shock on us. We arrived there and we were told the lady had actually just, you know, passed on. So the members of parliament need to play their role, but we as citizens need to put pressure on the members of parliament to play their role. Because remember, there's a time that the sugar scandal was being discussed in parliament. What happened? Members of parliament received kickbacks within parliament and they were fighting about it.
Again, the parliamentarians being brought into sharp focus. Ben, even as we are going to the break on this one, what's your take on this? Because this is money that's supposed to be feeding starving Kenyans.
You know, Jeff, foremost, I sincerely want to hope that this did not happen under the watch of the former chairperson of the NDMA, my friend, former Kibwezi MP, Agnes Ndete. Because 2 months ago, I was with her here on K24, and she was all over the place about how in 2017, no single Kenyan died out of starvation. She's on record here on K24. So if this happened under her watch, and when I remember the struggle and the pain I have seen the people of Kibwezi and many other parts of this country, there is nothing as painful as dying out of hunger, whereby you have only your saliva to swallow until you die. Not even, I mean, you have even seen cases of people eating even dog meat or cat meat, all that. Nothing. I mean, this is now beyond parliament. This is beyond corruption.
What's the solution?
This is satanic. No, this is purely satanic. And I would want to go with a caricature here by Stano in the People Daily, whereby we should introduce actually caning of individuals in public service. I don't know, because we removed it from primary schools. We removed it from primary schools, and this is very disheartening, where we can sit. And you see, this comes immediately after 2015. You remember 15 billion shillings was set aside for El Nino that never existed. So what we are seeing now is a scenario whereby we have individuals in government who create crises that do not exist so that they can siphon money, yet the people who are ultimately intended to benefit are dying. The same case with what we have just seen about NHIF. We have serious cases of Kenyans who cannot even access basic health care. Yet people in Nairobi, in community, at the NHIF building, you remember the clerk. What happened to that fellow who used to fly to Athi River? We remember the drama when he was arrested.
Yeah.
That particular receptionist who used to fly, who owns houses in Athi River.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of nonsense has to stop. We must reach a point whereby even Kenyans on the ground, actually, I would sincerely advocate for a case whereby if I go to my village and I cannot explain how I acquired my new V8, people should be able to begin to ban those cars.
Okay, let's take a break at that particular point in time, because as you can hear, like this, we were looking for the solutions moving forward, and you want your solutions as well at K24 TV. Ben Muller talking about the fact that that audit in terms of lifestyle isn't a government issue, even in your own village, in your own neighborhood. Look at that as well. Tweet us at K24 TV. At Junior Mato saying that's not the truth. The truth is that they are taught to adapt to the environment and practices in parliament or perish. Talking about politicians and how the corruption takes place right there. We want your views as well. K24 TV, SMS us on 21222. We take a break. Back after the break, we're still talking about the corruption, but this time round, church playing its part, the Catholic Church banning cash donations. We're talking about that as well after the break. This is K24 This Morning.